You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, the Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, rocking the fresh Fresno Grizzlies cap is Skyler Timmons.
It's one of the only ones that fits my head anymore.
Skyler and I, we are sufferers of the large head. You got to make sure that you got a cap that fits.
I was once at a 7 3/8. I'm up to, what is this now? 7 3/4.
7 3/4 is what I wear.
And that was within like the past year. I was rocking some 7.5s. Something like that.
You gotta lay off the steroids, Skyler.
It's true. All those home runs I'm hitting.
He's like pre and post. You go back to when we first started the podcast, and it's like pre and post Barry Bonds.
Well, I've been drinking this brain and nerve tonic that I've heard leads to gigantism.
But it just tastes so good.
Yeah, it's like a party in my mouth, and everyone's invited.
Just don't fall down the Springfield mystery hole.
Mm-hmm.
And shave off those sideburns.
I think that Don Mattingly says he still gets that all the time.
I'm glad. I wonder if Steve Sachs gets accused of all the murders in New York City.
It's true. They've never been solved.
It has been 0 episodes without a Simpsons reference.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not here to talk about The Simpsons, though you'd be surprised by that fact, I suppose.
We launch a soft launch of a rewatch series.
I'd actually be kind of down for that. That would be really fun. I haven't gone back and watched a lot of old Simpsons in quite some time.
We'd watch nothing but the baseball episodes, though, so it stays relevant.
This is just a dark, dark day for baseball.
Mm-hmm. Watch every clip that has baseball in it.
It's when you round first, you drink a beer. When you get to second, you drink a beer.
Hey,
when you get home, you drink a beer, and the fourth inning is the beer inning.
Hey.
We know how to play baseball.
We know how to play softball. My favorite that me and my brothers always relate to back to the Rockies is Bart's walking by the Isotope Stadium or by the Isotopes players. Ball comes over like, hey, little help. And he throws it back and he's like, gonna win some games this year? Gonna try. And the guy just has the wimpiest throw. He's like, eh. And so I just think about that with the Rockies all the time. You gonna win some games here? Gonna try. Eh.
I still love one of the things that does bring me a lot of joy is the fact that our minor league affiliate literally exists because of a Simpsons episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can you not be romantic about baseball?
Indeed.
But speaking of being romantic about baseball, the most fun period we've had so far this season as Colorado Rockies fans is unfortunately over. The Colorado Rockies win streak is cut down at 7 games with last night's loss against the San Francisco Giants. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people I know did not expect the Rockies to be good this year, and none of us were particularly fooled by this win streak that all of a sudden the Rockies were a really good team. But boy, it was fun while it lasted.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully by the time you hear this, they've won 1 or 2 more games and started a new streak against the Giants, those pesky, pesky Giants. Real talk, Evan, we hate the Giants.
Yes.
Like, they are the most infuriating. Like, playing against the Dodgers, yeah, it's annoying. But we kind of expect, like, yeah, they're probably going to beat us up. But the dang Giants, there's just something about the way they play baseball against the Rockies is just infuriating. But we'll probably get into that in a second. But it was, yeah, a 7-game win streak. That's fun. And the second team in MLB history to go on that long of a streak after not winning back-to-back games prior at all. joining the 1889 Indianapolis Hoosiers. So say what you will, this has been a historical Rockies team this year for all the right and wrong reasons.
Yeah, I know. I think you said you've been keeping track, Skyler, of just every weird historical record we break, because
Yeah, trying to.
there's been a lot of them so far. But you have to look at the fact for how much fun this was, is that the Rockies, like Skyler said, had not won consecutive games all season, hadn't won a series, hadn't won back to games, and all of a sudden they've won back-to-back games. Then they won 3.
Mm-hmm.
Then they swept the Rangers. Then they swept the Padres, and it was it was the most fun that we've had this season, because I'm not going to lie, it was pretty miserable for the first part of the season. Then all of a sudden we're rattling off these wins, and in like definitive manner, these were good wins.
Mm-hmm.
Started with a 9-1 victory over the Giants at home, and then a sweep of the Rangers and a sweep of the Padres. Rangers at home, Padres on the road, and we were like, that's new, a definitive win on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's the Padres. The Rockies, of all the teams in the NL West, for some reason we play okay against the Padres, and then we hit this Giant series, and I think we all had a little bit of a doubt in our mind that this was probably where the streak was going to end at some point, if anywhere, was against the Giants, because historically, like Sarah said, they've had our number. It's when we play the Giants, and it doesn't matter how many injuries they have, they're gonna find a way to beat us. And unfortunately, that's what happened last night.
Yeah, and it's tough because we figure what's really been driving this is some good starting pitching, specifically Cal Quantrill and Austin Gomber. The rest of the rotation's been a little more shaky, and Ryan Feltner hasn't really been as crisp. He's kind of been up and down. It really depends on if he has his command or not, which he hasn't really had. And it's not walking a lot of guys. He's just kind of erratic, getting in deep counts, and then leaves a pitch over the plate, and it gets hit. And then Dakota Hudson, I think, is striving to walk the most people in the history of baseball or something. And then you got Ty Block just doing his thing. But it was figuring, yeah, the Giants just have our number. The Rockies are like 6 and something against at Oracle Park, even dating back to 2021. Like, we've last won a series in 2022 against the Giants in San Francisco, something like that. So it's just a weird combination coming into San Francisco where you're like, yeah, this probably isn't going to turn out super great. But dating back to the start of this, throughout this streak, but specifically that series in San Diego, the Rockies look like an entirely different team on the road. I think, Evan, is the important distinction here is there was really no discernible difference from how they're playing at home than when they went on the road. And yeah, for some reason we like to beat up on the Padres. But there seemed like a seamless transition where for moments I forgot, yeah, it doesn't even look like the altitude had any effect. They were not affected by altitude. Mondays at 10 a.m.
This guy. Well, you're right, because they put up a decent amount of runs against the Padres, and then even last night against the Giants, they had a 5-run ball game, which, like, that still seems like a lot for the Rockies on the road, because what's been the major thing on the road for the Rockies is the bats just die. They completely disappear, and that's not been the case so far. And then you have guys, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, like Jordan Beck, who's been fantastic over the last couple games, really seems to be finding his groove. And Ryan McMahon, Charlie Blackmon, everybody's playing pretty well. The defense has been pretty good. The starting pitching really boils down to Austin Gomber and Cal Quantrill, and we talked about them a little bit in our Player of the Month selections last week. But I don't think there's enough talk going around about just how good the two of them have been in the month of May and continue to be. Can you tell me? Can you guess, Skyler, what the ERA is for Cal Quantrill and Austin Gomber in the month of May?
Combined?
Individually.
I know it's mostly below 1.
Austin Gomber's ERA is 0.48.
Mm-hmm.
He has allowed 1 earned run in 3 starts in 18 2/3 innings. Cal Quantrill is 0.92. He has allowed 2 earned runs in 19 2/3 innings. And a big part of both of those is that they are not walking a lot of guys. Gomber and Quantrill only have 6 walks apiece when it comes to walks in the month of May. And they've got okay strikeout numbers. Cal Quantrill, who's not a big strikeout guy, has 19 strikeouts, and Gomber, who's not a huge strikeout guy but has 13. That'll play. That's really solid pitching from both of these guys. And I kind of wish the rest of the rotation would catch up. We've seen some changes. Peter Lambert has been removed from the rotation after it wasn't working, and he was doing better work out of the bullpen. Ryan Feltner's really been the hit or miss guy for me, where he will have a really good outing or he will have a not so good outing, or he caps off a very good outing with it ending pretty poorly. We saw that in that game 1 against the Miami Marlins. But, the big thing last night was that he didn't have his control. He wasn't hitting his spots. And then he was delivering some meatballs for the Giants to deliver on. But he overall is, without a doubt, our 3rd best pitcher in this rotation right now. But what I would really like to see from him is just finding that next level, clicking up to that next gear. Because we've been saying all year, of all the guys in this rotation, he has the most potential. And I'd really like to see him deliver on that potential. And we've seen the flashes.
Yeah, it's all about that growth. And that's really what you want to see from guys. Growth, physically, performance-wise, and mentally developing still as well. And just continue to show growth at the big league level. Because he's got that power arm. He's got the power arm in the rotation. But what's nice is having Gomber and Quantrill able to set that tone, and that theory of like passing the baton in a rotation, which was really key during the whole 7-game streak, where somebody has a stellar outing. Quantrill has a great outing. Pass the baton. Gomber has a great outing. All right, pass the baton. Feltner has a good outing. Pass the baton. Ty Block goes 5 innings, 1 run. Hand it off. Okay. Dakota Hudson wasn't terrible in San Diego. Pass the baton again. And just keep going. And that's what I think really helps fuel the streak, especially. Yeah, there's some great timely hitting. They were doing enough to win games. There's still problems with the offense and other things. But they were doing their part. But it really falls back to pitching. Pitching wins ball games, especially your starter. You need a good starting pitcher who can give you not only length, Evan, when it's nice when they're averaging roughly around 6 innings, 5 or 6 innings, so they're giving you some length to help your bullpen be rested where they don't have to carry as much slack. And so it's just a good recipe of your starting pitching needs to get it done. And for the most part, they have. Specifically, Gomber and Quantrill.
The pitching overall has actually been very solid during this 7-game stretch, this 8-game stretch, even going into last night. But if we're looking at just the 7-game win streak, the Rockies pitching staff was doing really well, and it was a well-rounded effort. They lowered the team ERA all the way down to 5.03 during that stretch. But during the 7-game win streak, the Rockies had a team ERA of 1.86. And they struck out more batters than they had walks. 44 strikeouts, 32 walks. And that was really the big thing. And we've had a lot of guys from the bullpen step up as well here in the month of May. Tyler Kinley, who had a really difficult April, was still very clearly trying to find his rhythm after coming back from that injury and surgery, not playing a lot over the last year or so. In the month of May, he has 5 scoreless outings. And then Justin Lawrence, who also had a pretty difficult April, has another 5 scoreless outings for the Rockies in the month of May. Then you've got guys like Victor Vodnik, who have been just really solid so far this season. Nick Mears, who's been pretty good. This bullpen is getting it done. And I think a large part of that is, like you said, the rotation is going deep into ball games, not overtaxing the bullpen, and it can be a good collaborative effort.
Your bullpen's at its best when you can use it when you want to, not when you're forced to do it. And though we will acknowledge that game where the bullpen issued like 8 or so walks in the final like 3 innings of the game against the Padres, against their best efforts, they managed to win that game still.
They got away from that when it was, 11 total walks that game?
Yeah, 8 of them in the last like 3 or 4 innings.
That was not a game the Rockies should have won. Not even a little bit.
No, it is. Awful.
But then you have the batting as well, and the batting has held their weight during this 7-game stretch, the 7-game win streak. Team OPS of 822 with 7 home runs, 2 triples, 17 doubles. Where it does get ugly is the 64 strikeouts to 14 walks, but 8 stolen bases, just 1 caught stealing. And they're putting up the runs. And it's been such a fun change of pace, because it even started with the second loss in that Giant series back at home. The Rockies scored 6 runs. And this was the day after being shut out 5-0. Then 9 runs, 4 runs, 8 runs, 3, 5, 6, 8. And then even last night they scored 5. So they are getting 5+ runs on the board consistently. And I think that is so important, because we can't just be, this team is going to strike out a lot, but we can't just be flailing at everything and not doing anything on offense.
Yeah. It takes all assets, all facets of that build together to actually win games, and some just we haven't gotten for the first month of the season, where everything was sort of clicking together as a team, and during the streak where they felt like a complete team. Everything, you had faith that, okay, they get a ground ball here, they're going to turn a double play. They get a ball in the air, somebody's going to track it down, make a play. You had faith in our defense, which maybe we should highlight that a little bit later in the show. Talk about that, is how good that defense has been. But the pitching was getting it done. You're getting some solid pitching and then timely hitting. Combine those 3 things, heck, even some stolen bases in there. Combine all those things, and that's how you win ball games and stun the other teams.
It was definitely the most well-rounded we have seen this Rockies team be all year, where every single part of what you need, like you said, timely hitting, good pitching, good defense, was clicking all at once. All 3 of those cylinders were going at the same time. And we will talk about that defense a little bit later. But I'll bring it up a little bit now. Yeah, we've been getting web gems aplenty. Some really incredible defense from this team. Brendan Rodgers making these great diving stops. McMahon being McMahon. Brenton Doyle out in center field, crashing into walls and still making the grab. Jordan Beck has made some great catches in left field as he acclimates to defense on a major league level. He's had a couple that, he's had some difficulties on, but you got to keep in mind that he's been up for a couple weeks at this point. Jake Cave plays really solid defense in the outfield. As frustrating as it is to see him get as much playing time as he is, he's providing defensive value.
Yeah. It all works together.
Sort of like it's poetry. They rhyme.
Sure.
It's so dense. Every moment on screen has so much going on in it.
And then Jar Jar Binks, he gets his tongue stuck in the laser thingy.
And then he steps in the poopy. And he shouts about how it's gross. So that's pretty cool. Right, guys?
Sure, George.
Well, I think we're going to take a break. So while we take a break, I want you to think about how important Jar Jar Binks is.
Midi-chlorians. That's what's led to the Rockies' wins. Midi-chlorians. 25th anniversary.
Do, 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 do.
Oh no, stop, Disney's coming after us.
That was short enough that it's fair use.
They don't care.
But don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a second. I'm coming for you. Does Mickey Mouse have to choke a bee? Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. That's Skyler. I'm Evan, and we were just finishing up talking about the Rockies' 7-game win streak that unfortunately came to an end. May it rest in peace. The most fun stretch of Rockies baseball in the 2024 season so far.
All we have now is the Nuggets in Game 7.
Yeah, unfortunately, last night was not a good night for Colorado sports fans, with the Avalanche being eliminated by the Dallas Stars and vile enemy Matt Duchene in double overtime, and then the Rockies win streak coming to an end. It was hard. It was a bad night, especially because the Rockies, when they got up to that big lead to start, they scored those 5 runs. You're like, yeah, we got this. The streak's gonna keep going, and then
the offense stopped.
The offense stopped. The pitching struggled. A big concern right now has been, so Anthony Molina at the end of the game did not have a great outing. It was probably his first pretty poor outing in a hot minute.
For a while.
he hadn't pitched in a while, but he gave up 2 earned runs on 3 hits, walked a guy. The one I am concerned about, and Bud Black voiced a little bit of concern in his post-game presser, is Jake Bird. Jake Bird pitched 2 innings last night and walked 3 batters, gave up 2 earned runs on 1 hit. And there's been a little bit, Jake Bird has shown flashes of the pitcher that he was last year, where he was really the workhorse of this bullpen. But he's also had some struggles this year. And I do wonder how much of it is related to just how much he pitched and how much he was relied upon last year. But it's been tough for him so far this season. It's not been a fabulous year for him so far.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of relievers too, where he was overexposure, probably a big thing, part of it too, where there's so much more info and okay, this is how Jake Bird likes to pitch and all this stuff, where he just hasn't looked crisp. Maybe he needs to go back and cut his hair and pull out all the stops to get that mojo back. But it's one of those. It's tough as a reliever to maintain that consistency year to year, especially for the Rockies. I think where he got used so much, he's exposed so much, where now hitters kind of can expect and know what he is, and then how predictable the Rockies are with their pitching and whatnot, and their philosophy and approach. It can result in, oh man, but that's the big thing too, is he's not throwing strikes, and that's the big problem. When you're not throwing strikes, doesn't matter how effective you were the year before, or how much you can be. If you can't throw a ball in the zone, or even like tempt batters to chase, then it's not going to work out very well.
Yeah, and it's tough for Bird, but that's the same thing we're seeing from Ryan Feltner as well. Is you've got to hit your positions. You've got to really attack the strike zone and hit those spots. And that's part of why guys like Victor Vodnik have been so good this year, is they are attacking all parts of the zone and, hitting their spots.
Look at Dakota Hudson. When he's at his best, it's when he's not walking 5 dudes in a game, because then he's only thrown like 4 innings. Like at the start of the year, he was, maybe like 2 or 3, which it's not great, but when it's spread over 5 innings, you can deal with that. But when he's walking a ton of guys, that's when you get into trouble, because you're just putting more traffic on the bases, and then I can't throw a ball here because then that'll load them, or I got to attack this guy. Oops, I left it over the plate, and it's a 3-run homer. Yeah,
and that's the thing, is it's a mental toughness in addition to a skill and consistency thing and when you find yourself in trouble, you've got to be able to get yourself out of trouble as well. And it's been something that, as we've talked about, guys like Cal Quantrill and Austin Gomber have been showing in spades so far this season. And I'm hoping that continues to spread to the rest of the rotation. Though I do think there's going to be some rotational changes in the relatively near future. We don't know when Kyle Freeland is going to be back, but Noah Davis is working on coming back from injury. We saw some video he posted the other day of him in the pitching lab working on some new pitching stuff. And, you know, his goal is to be back in the big league rotation. But then we've also got guys down in the minors who are going to be vying for a spot relatively soon. Guys like Carson Palmquist.
Give me Palmquist.
And that's the thing is, you know, Dakota Hudson, if he's going to keep walking, you know, five guys a game, then you want to see maybe if there's somebody else who can take his spot. Or, you know, I love Ty Block. We all love the little cat, but I feel like the purpose for this year, which is a rebuilding year, like it or not, would be better served if his spot in the rotation was, you know, a younger guy who we can see if he's going to be part of this team's future.
Yeah. We like Ty Block. He's that stray cat that we keep just, all right, get out of here. And then it comes right back.
We keep putting out food for him.
So yeah, we keep putting out that minor league contract, and he keeps finding his way up onto the roster, which he serves his role well, but he's only ever like supposed to be a stopgap, just kind of a fill-in. Oh, Ty Block or Kyle Freeland's gone down. We'll bring up Ty Block. We need another lefty. Oh, Peter Lambert's struggling in the rotation. We'll put Ty Block in there. He can do it for now. Eat some innings. But yeah, better served if you got to get that shuffling around. We're seeing some of these teams around the league already. The White Sox making a bunch of trades, starting to make more trades, and so that's something maybe the Rockies need to start following suit. Is just going through that roster shuffle here by the beginning of June. Your roster should probably look a lot different already. Give us some of those younger guys. Carson Palmquist, dude's about ready down there in Double-A Hartford. Like he's dealing down there, and you don't want to expose him to Triple-A Albuquerque, which has been horrendous for pitching. So yeah, you gotta start shuffling some things because that 1-in-6 billion walks of Dakota Hudson with a super high ERA, probably not the best suited thing for your team that's trying to reconstruct, as they like to put it.
Yeah, and the Rockies have been doing, and you know, I guess this is a good time I need to talk about roster shuffle, a lineup shuffle. The Rockies have been pretty infuriating over the last week or so because Sean Bouchard has barely played. Hunter Goodman essentially hasn't played at all. And Jake Cave has started, 5 games in a row now in right field? But Jake Cave is getting consistent starting time, which is exactly what shouldn't be happening. And I will admit that Cave has been pretty solid during this stretch. He's getting hits. He's playing good defense. But that's kind of not the point. You signed this guy to be your backup outfielder. And now Sean Bouchard and Hunter Goodman just continue to sit on the bench. What I will give the Rockies praise for is that they have shown that they are committed to Jordan Beck. He has, since being called up, played all but 1 game, which was a scheduled day off for him. Despite the offensive struggles, despite trying to get his feet underneath him, they're letting him play, which is great. But now you have the concern of the impending returns of Kris Bryant and Nolan Jones. Both KB and Nojo are on rehab assignment with the AAA Albuquerque Isotopes, and we don't know what the Rockies are going to do when they call them back up, when they activate them. So with the rehab assignment, they have, I think, a max of 20 days down there with Albuquerque, and we thought the other day that Kris Bryant was on his way to meet up with the team because he wasn't on the lineup card for the Isotopes. And Bud Black and the team had said our target date for getting KB up is the start of the Giants series on May 17th. Then KB was down on the lineup card in Albuquerque. So now I'm guessing it's probably not going to be until Monday or Tuesday when they're going to make that first roster move to activate Kris Bryant. Though, of course, you never know with this team. Yeah. But the question is...
And hopefully with our space-time continuum where we record this on Saturday, we'll have these answers by Monday, maybe. But, just keep that in mind as you're listening to this. We're in the past.
Yes. And always note that little disclaimer at the bottom of the post on Purple Row. this was recorded in the past. Things might be that up to date. But we've all been a little concerned over at Purple Row and Skyler and I about what the Rockies are going to do to activate Kris Bryant, to put him on the roster.
Yeah, you send down Hunter Goodman.
That's probably the best case scenario at this point, is that they're gonna option Hunter Goodman, which honestly they should have optioned him already. He's getting almost no playing time right now. The only reason he is with the team, I would say, is that it's because Elias Diaz is injured right now. He's dealing with a sore left hand and wrist that's been bothering him for a couple weeks. So that makes Hunter Goodman the backup catcher.
Oh, and also there's nobody else they'd bring up anyway down there in AAA. So he's not on the 40-man yet. So
put him on the 40-man.
So I'm not super mad about Jake Cave playing, and I know this may irk some people, but it's something we talked about last week. Do you want the Rockies to put the best team on the field, or do you want them to put the best developmental team on the field? And of those three, Jake Cave's the best defender, and I will take defense in the outfield over Bouchard and Goodman, who they both haven't been as impactful with the bat. Bouchard is that better bench option where he can come in with that occasional playing time. But Hunter Goodman, and I've made this comparison, he's kind of like Willeen Rosario, where he's kind of a man without a position, where I don't think the Rockies trust him as a catcher very much. At least the big league team doesn't. And he's not the best defensively in right field or first base. So he's kind of a man without a permanent home. And then the offense where strikeouts, or he just hasn't found much luck with the bat at the big league level. And so it's kind of putting ourselves in the mind of the Rockies, where it's kind of, what are they supposed to do with him? And you can say that about a lot of guys, where they could run him out there every day, which it probably would be better or put him out in some spot to just get him at bats and see what you have. And then if you don't see him having anything, well, then you can cut him loose or do what you need to. But it's always this weird thing. But the Rockies didn't want to mess with mojo during a 7-game win streak where Jake Cave played a part, making a ton of web gems in the outfield. You don't want to mess with that. Mess with the mojo. Now that they've lost, you can put caution to the wind and figure that out. But that seems to be the key move. When Bryant comes back, Goodman probably goes down. Jones comes back, Bouchard probably goes down. Because hopefully, and Beck's backing it up, where he's performing, he's getting better, showing development. Got a couple of bombs already, hit back-to-back games. Had a 5 RBI game the other day. He's starting to grow, and he's getting that treatment of, okay, kid, let's see what you do, learning on the fly. They're just not willing to afford that to maybe some of these other guys. A 20-whatever-year-old Sean Bouchard and 24-year-old Hunter Goodman.
Yeah, Bouchard just turned 28 this week.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where, Bouchard, we like him, but does he really have a future on this team? He's Connor Joe with us still. Where, we like him and he has a good plate approach, but really has no place on a team that's trying to aim for a next contention window,
I will say, I do still miss Connor Joe. There are times that I wish he was still on this team. I was watching when Paul Skeens made his big league debut, and Connor Joe was, out there and he hit a home run, and man, I miss the guy. But I do get that. The thing I am incredibly happy about with this team is that they are giving Jordan Beck, the Ezekiel Tovar, the Brenton Doyle, the Nolan Jones treatment. Now that he is up and he's playing every day. And as long as they keep doing that, then I'm happy. Mm-hmm. Because, and they've done this, I'm really surprised that they've done this for Alaris Montero as well. He has started almost every game at first base. And he's developed into a really, he's never going to, like I've said, he's never going to win a Gold Glove.
But he's good enough.
But he is a solid enough first baseman that you can trust him there.
Well,
and I think that was the tough thing for him.
Yeah, when he's coming in as a defensive replacement at first base late in a game over Hunter Goodman, you're like that tells you where the Rockies trust him with his glove nowadays.
And it's a nice change because remember it was last year and the year before where it was that same thing of he really didn't have a position. The team didn't feel like they could trust him at third base. They didn't feel like they could trust him at first base, but now they can trust him at first base, and it's up to him to get that bat going. And his bat has been starting to heat up a little bit over the last week or so. So that I'm happy with as well. The thing is, when you bring back Kris Bryant, you need to not let him cut into Monty's playing time too much, where you're going to start KB at first occasionally and at DH. But you need to still make sure that Monty's getting plenty of playing time, because then you can finally make that decision. I think the Rockies need to make that decision. Is Monty staying a Rocky? Is he part of the future of this team? Otherwise, you can start shopping him at the deadline.
Yeah.
And it's the same for, Bouchard and Tolia and Goodman. Is some trades are going to need to happen here. But the big thing with Kris Bryant coming back is no, do not put him in the outfield. Stop it. Get some help.
Get some help. Don't you do it. Don't you do it, Bud Black. I'm going to do it.
And then when Nolan Jones comes back, I think my question is, do you put Nolan back in left field and switch Jordan Beck over to right?
Yes. Because
I will say, Nolan has the arm strength for right field as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think with Nolan, he just has a little bit better, I think, range, and then the familiarity of playing left field a little bit more after last season, where I think Beck has been more of a right fielder coming up and everything, where maybe a little less intensive for him to play right field and continue to learn playing at the big league level, I think would be good. But I think they're pretty committed there. You need a borderline center fielder in left field at Coors Field, and I think Nolan Jones fits that bill just a little bit better. No, especially with his cannon, it's a little bit better in left field for the Rockies.
But then the big thing that needs to happen when Nolan Jones is back is that Jake Cave if you're going to keep Jake Cave, you have got to go back to just having him be the backup outfielder. Mm-hmm. You cannot have him starting this much. And I get it. It was part of the mojo of that win streak. But with that outfield should be pretty much every day Doyle, Beck, Jones.
Which I think it will when they come back. They're pretty committed. Jake Cave is just, that backup. They have, we need to start him more because our regulars are down. Kris Bryant hurt his back, so we can't be starting him in right field every day now. So I trust the Rockies enough where they're not going to send Jake Cave out there once these guys come back. Hopefully. Don't make me a liar. Don't make a fool of me, Rockies. But that would be my thing. But they have to learn to manage everything between Charlie Blackmon. They've shown we can go give Charlie plenty of days off during a week, mainly because they probably don't want to pay that extra $2 million. But they've shown they can do that. So Bryant, Montero, and Chuck kind of enter this. They go from that 6-man platoon down to this 3-man where you can just sort of cycle those 3 around, where Charlie can start in the outfield every once in a while, but probably not as much if you have Jones, Doyle, Beck in the outfield.
Exactly. And I like Skyler said, don't make liars of us, Rockies.
Fool me once, shame on me.
Like it's pretty obvious what the regular lineup needs to look like going forward here. And, it's going to be dependent on, and we touch about this a little bit more, and we'll touch a little bit after the break, when the Rockies are going to start making moves. And I think that's going to be our next topic here. So we're going to take one last ad break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Skyler and Evan. And I think, Skyler, for the last little bit of this podcast, as you mentioned earlier, other teams, bottom dwellers, which unfortunately the Rockies still are, despite that win streak, are starting to make moves, are starting to, unfortunately, punt for the future knowing that contention's not really in the cards. We've seen the Marlins do it, the White Sox do it, and honestly, I think the Rockies should do it too, not waiting until the deadline. But between now and the deadline, I would say there's a lot of moves to make. And I'm just sort of going to go through our options here, and we say, do we trade this guy? Do we try and make a move? And some of them are going to be pretty obvious, and some of them, I don't really know how I feel about it, but I figure that's a good way to sort of wrap things up today, since we've been talking so much about roster moves and roster changes.
Sounds good.
What do you think?
Das is good.
So the first guy on my list here, I think, is a very obvious answer, and that is, as much as he has done for this organization since he's become their starting catcher, Elias Diaz should be traded sooner rather than later.
Yes.
I love Elias Diaz. I think he's very clearly been a great clubhouse presence and a good performer for this team, but his contract is up at the end of the year, and I do not see the Rockies bringing him back next year with Jacob Stallings with a team option for next year and Drew Romo looking more and more like he is ready to go down in AAA Albuquerque. And you're not going to give him a qualifying offer. And there are plenty of teams out there that need a catcher, be it the New York Mets, the San Francisco Giants, the St. Louis Cardinals. And I think Elias can be a big return on value. He's still got the name recognition of being the All-Star Game MVP. He's off to a really good start this season, and hopefully his injury is nothing serious. It's going to keep him away for too long. But unfortunately, I think it is time.
Yeah, it's best to strike sooner rather than later, because strike while the iron's hot. And it can be tough because how does the rest of the league value? Do they value the Diaz the same way the Rockies do? Probably not. Where I think a lot of people still view him as a below adequate catcher in terms of the framing and stuff. But there's definitely would have to be somebody out there, even if they need like a catcher / DH, an extra guy to add in there. Sure, any of those contending teams could probably look for something like that. So yeah, do it now. Before it's too late. Hopefully it is just a sore hand that's kind of bruised from catching so many heaters and blocking so many balls and catching them in the palm. Hopefully it's just it just needs iced and needs some rest for a little bit.
Yeah, they said they wanted to give him a couple of days, but and that's something that can't be overlooked is Elias Diaz has been our Iron Man for this team during his time. He shrugs off a lot of injuries and a lot of hard hits, and he has played so many games over the last couple of seasons. But I think that's even more of, especially with his injury now, time to strike while that iron's hot, because you don't know how long that Iron Man status is going to get the older he gets. And he's about to be, I think, 33 years old, which is, a little long in the tooth, considering that we are aiming to get Drew Romo up here probably by the end of this year.
And because you have Jacob Stallings there with him, who could also be a trade candidate, but it's the fact that we kind of have a way to bring him back for next year, and he can serve as that backup mentor to a Drew Romo type, who, please don't let Stallings, if he sticks around, get more starting time than Drew Romo.
Yes, Drew Romo is another one where he needs the Tovar treatment. You drafted him that high for a reason. He has performed well. If he's up on the team, he's got to be your starting catcher.
And Elias Diaz is 33 right now. He'll turn 34 in November.
All right. Yeah. So
trade him.
Definitely trade him. And like I said, I love Elias Diaz, but it's time.
Yeah. And we talked about that before. We're like, oh, do you want to risk how that would impact your rotation, but that's just the nature of the game. Like catchers come and go, and you can't based all like Diaz isn't going to stick around, so you might as well get the catcher that is going to be sticking around for a little bit to get him start working with these pitchers, and pitchers always changing anyway. So
yeah, and this rotation is going to look a lot different over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
The next guy, speaking of these pitching and getting different, Cal Quantrill.
Mm-hmm.
Cal Quantrill has a year of team control, or is it 1 year or 2? A year of team control remaining after this season. Do you, based on how well he has done for the Rockies this year, keep him around as a veteran piece to the rotation, especially when he's done pretty well at Coors and he seems to be meshing well in the clubhouse? Or do you trade him to a pitching needy team between now and the deadline?
This one's tougher.
I'll say I am actually down to keep Cal Quantrill.
That's where I am, just because of the uncertainty of our rotation, and there's so many open slots still with the rotation, and you're not getting much help at all out of AAA, and you don't want to necessarily rush all of your guys up from AA, so to speak. There's like, okay, Carson Palmquist, he's the one, but who else down there in AA Hartford would be ready to step into a regular rotation role? Not many that I can think of. So if I had to, I would stick with him, because there's still much of the uncertainty with Herman coming back, Kyle Freeland coming back eventually, after the All-Star break for Herman, and who knows with Kyle. So it's just for the sheer uncertainty of I want to have a good pitcher still.
Also, I like him. Like, I will admit there is some, I really like this guy behind my decision, but it is that so far this season he has been good and consistent. And like you said, we have no idea how this rotation is going to look, even in the second half of this season, because of all that injury uncertainty. Looking at the injured list with Kyle Freeland, we don't know if we're going to, when he's even going to get back on the mound. They think maybe in like 2 weeks he'll start throwing from the mound again.
Yeah, and then who knows? May start ramping up and hurts that elbow even more, and then has to get Tommy John. So, hey, Zach Greinke's still out there working out. He's still available. I wouldn't mind some weird Greinke action.
I'd do it.
But now, if a good deal came along for the Rockies for Cal Quantrill, then by all means trade him.
Yes, absolutely.
But if it's one of those, we don't really see, we want to see what he can do. Maybe in the off, maybe look and see to try to trade him in the off season. We want to finish out this season with him or something. I don't know. But as with most things, I'm not just trade him for the sake of trading him, because you still got to get something, some good value if you can.
I agree with that. And there's not really a whole lot of pitchers on this team that are going to have super high trade value.
Yeah.
Dakota Hudson is much more of a DFA candidate than a trade candidate.
What are you talking about? Nobody wants Dakota Hudson?
Really, I would say the only other pitcher that we've got right now that's going to be a big potential trade chip is Jalen Beeks.
Mm-hmm.
And for Jalen, it's the same thing as a lot of those veteran bullpen guys from last year. If you get a deal, you take it.
Nah, he's going to get the Brent Suter treatment, because they think they can re-sign him, and then he won't re-sign.
Oh, man. I do miss Brent Suter. He was a lot of fun.
I do miss the Raptor.
But it's just funny for pitching, because we had so many guys to trade last year that this year there's really not a lot of candidates. You've got Tyler Kinley, who's one of the older guys on the team right now, and I believe he's the oldest guy in the bullpen.
Mm-hmm. And he's under contract for a couple more years.
Exactly. He's still under contract, and there's still some uncertainty with him recovering from that surgery. Though, like I said, he's been pretty good in the month of May. But a lot of the other trades are going to come from position players.
Yeah.
And we'll just do the trifecta, the quadrilogy of guys the Rockies need to figure out what they're doing. Either throw a punch or get out of the ring. It's Michael Toglia, Sean Bouchard, Alaris Montero, and Hunter Goodman.
Mm-hmm.
I think
that's the thing.
At this point, the one that I would lean away from trading, if he can continue to heat up and continues to show the development he has this year, is Monty.
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, if you get trade offers for any of the other three, you might as well take them, especially considering how little playing time Hunter Goodman is getting. And it really seems like the team is not sold on these guys being part of the future here. And same for Bouchard, where he's 28 years old. He's not getting any younger. And you've got to decide, is this our bench bat moving forward, or does he not fit into the future of this team at all? And it's the same for Toglia, where Toglia is not getting consistent playing time at a big league level. But he's decent enough down in Albuquerque. But there's just very clearly not a trust there with the organization.
At least not with his bat, and we've seen it where he gets up to the big league level and the bat just doesn't work. No, we saw that improvement. There was some minor improvement, to start the year, but then after that, it just dissipated. And strikeouts are a problem. Where he's got the glove, he's got the potential, because we see down in Albuquerque, dude's a monster in Albuquerque. Hitting home runs from both sides of the plate. He's driving in runs, doing all kinds of stuff. Shows better plate discipline. But then he gets to the Rockies and it's an entirely different player. And so and when you're jammed up at first base with Kris Bryant and Montero's in there even, Toglia is it's going to be a make or break for him next year, of where they have to make a decision on him for next year, because Charlie Blackmon presumably retires. So that opens up, we can slide Bryant into the DH and figure out stuff there. So I think the Rockies, because I don't think many teams are stumbling over each other trying to get to Michael Toglia. So I don't think there's much prospect of trading him. It's because there's not much value at the moment that I could see other teams perceiving like, yeah, we got to have that.
And there is a bright side for Toglia in that he still has an option year left.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, is Bouchard out of options after this year? Let's find out.
What do you know? Hunter Goodman is catching today.
Yeah, I was
going
to say, after I figured this out, as we record, it just got put out, and Bouchard's got options too. So I would say then that narrows it down to, and Hunter Goodman also still has options. They all have options, but the thing is, it's so crowded down there that you need to start making some decisions, especially as other guys are starting to make their way through the organization. Like next year, you have guys that are in high A and double A that are going to be in triple A. But this is really interesting. So the Rockies just put out their lineup for the day, and Hunter Goodman is starting at catcher.
Mostly because Jacob Stallings got hit in the hand last night, throwing hand, and it is probably pretty bruised swollen today.
It is probably huge and purple. And he played the whole rest of that game. He was in some discomfort. So, and I like Jacob Stallings a lot. He's been a good addition to this team. But then also, Sean Bouchard is starting in right field.
And Alan Trejo at second base. So definitely not the heavy hitters lineup today.
Alan Trejo starting at second base brings up one of the other major guys that you have to look into trading to, in my opinion. That's Brendan Rodgers.
And he's another one with a year of control left.
But the Rockies also have so many middle infielders The Rockies are log jammed at so many different positions. It's kind of hysterical. Like I don't know how they. It's all self-inflicted, but I'm sitting here going, I don't know how you keep finding yourself in this situation where you're so severely log jammed pretty much everywhere, and it's because they cling so much onto prospects. But then that's another one of listen to offers. If you get a good offer, you can make a move on that offer knowing that you've got guys who are coming up.
Yeah, especially this year where they could probably trade him and then add like Coco Montez or Aaron Schunk and give them the run for the rest of the season and then reassess and figure out who's going to be the starting second baseman for next season, because Adel Amador, he's having a pretty rough year. It just hasn't really put it together in Double-A Hartford this season. So he's struggling a little bit. There's Sterling Thompson, who has learned to play second base, but I don't think he plays it very often. Or I don't know how often he's played it this year for Hartford. But he's another one of those guys. So you have some options that could just be fill-ins for the rest of the season. But it's hoping that Rogers can keep heating up more and more. Because the problem with Rogers is it's a lot of just empty offense at the moment, where the power is not there anymore. Like the power has not shown up or translated the way I think the Rockies had hoped. And then, of course, all the injuries that he's had. And so I feel like his value doesn't extend much beyond he's a really good defensive second baseman.
And he is. He's a fabulous defensive second baseman. That Gold Glove is well earned. But you've got the fact that now in his 6th year playing Major League Baseball, he's only got 2 seasons where he's played more than 100 games. And he's only got 2 seasons where he's got double-digit home runs.
Yeah. So it's tough. But yeah, it's another one of those. If you get good offers, if somebody's calling and say, hey, we need him, you pick up that phone and you figure out a deal.
Yeah. And just to sort of round things out, it's like, this is never, when we say we want to get a guy out of here, it's never us going like, oh, I hate that guy, I want him off this team. Like, even for Jake Cave, honestly, if he continues to play like he does, the Rockies may be able to Mike Moustakas him and get some value for him. And if that is what ends up happening, that is a success.
Yeah,
I was delighted with how things worked out with Mike Moustakas last year.
We'll call up, the Angels again and give them a bunch of guys and just keep depleting that farm system for them.
Yeah, we'll take a couple more. It's cool. We got space.
And then we'll call up the Guardians and get some guys from them, and then we'll call up the Braves and get some guys from them.
Really,
those are the 3 teams.
How much we trade and interact with just those 3 teams.
Because they're foolish enough to pick up the phone.
Hey, it's worked out for us so far.
I
mean, Cal Quantrill, we gave up a single-A catcher who, I like Cody Huff, but he doesn't really fit into the future of the organization right now. And it's gotten us a pretty solid workhorse pitcher, so I'll take it. But, just to round things out, it seriously is. If you get any really good offers on pretty much anybody, you pick up that phone. The only guys that are untouchable are the guys who you are absolutely certain are the future of this organization. And that's Brenton Doyle, that's Jordan Beck, Nolan Jones, any of the prospects down there. And we're not going to be trading prospects because we're sellers, baby.
Yeah. Don't be trading off prospects like Joe Rock or type of stuff. Just randomly depleting your resources.
That was so weird.
I think the ideal of acquisitions would be more or less like AAA level type players. Guys that can fill in on the cusp that maybe aren't quite there, but ready to make that jump. Your Jeff Criswell types who, Criswell hasn't exactly panned out very well down there in AAA. But kind of that caliber, that level of pitcher of guys that can be on the cusp of the big leagues, be good depth pieces.
So you reminded me of Joe Rock. Maybe want to go and look up and see how Mr. Rock is doing this year. I don't know the Spanish word for rock. Call your brother. Ask him. In 8 games, 6 starts, 36 innings pitched, Joe Rock has an ERA of 4.25 and a WHIP of 1.25 with AAA Durham.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. That's cromulent for his first season at AAA.
Yeah, I remember seeing somewhere he was kind of struggling a little bit there, but it was like Baseball America tweeting something of taking notice of Joe Rock because we always take notice when the Tampa Bay Rays trade for a pitcher. He's one to keep an eye on.
Greg Jones, meanwhile, who we obtained, the shortstop and center fielder,
injured,
26 years old. He's actually not on the injured list right now, but he has struggled with some injuries over the season. But he has played in just 17 games with 64 total at-bats with a 735 OPS, 1 home run, 5 doubles, 9 walks to 21 strikeouts. But he does have 12 stolen bases.
But man, can he run.
He's a speedy boy.
Mm-hmm. It's like Garrett Hampson all over again.
I'd rather just have Garrett Hampson back at this point. I already own the jersey.
Nah, I'm good. He can stay with the Royals.
How dare you? How dare you? Everybody was poo-pooing my man G-Hamp, the rocket hamster, yesterday.
Hey,
he's my boy.
We can like players and also realize that they're not the best. I loved Johnny Herrera growing up. Johnny Herrera wasn't a very good player. You can like a guy without not wanting him on your team.
But that's going to do it here for us on Affected by Altitude. Thank you so much for listening. As always, we're on your favorite podcasting platforms. If you like listening to us, give us a rating on that platform. Feel free to leave a review. We would very much appreciate it. And we appreciate you listening every week. We've got a nice little dedicated following of listeners, and it's always nice to hear good things about the show. So thank you very much. Skyler, where can the folks find you at right now?
Find me over on Twitter at sideline_crowd. Maybe someday I'll change that where it's more professional sounding. But for now, it's that. And then, find us writing over at purpleroad.com. I do Wednesday rock piles. And then occasionally writing stuff over at Fans First Sports Network. I had to stop writing game day recaps, Evan, because we went on a winning streak.
But you would stop writing game day recaps because we were losing so much.
It was like 2 days before that. I was like, this turned into a chore. And then we went on a win streak. And I was like, well, now I can't write them.
Because the mojo.
Yeah. Maybe I'll keep that going because it is a chore to write those.
Baseball superstition is the funniest thing to me. It's like Colton Cowser in Baltimore, who was on a little bit of a slump, so he shaved off his beard and started wearing high socks and then had a really good game.
It works. There's a story of like Todd Helton would come in and was like having to punch like Tiny in the clubhouse, the clubby for the Rockies, like smacked him like 3 times that day. And then Todd went and had a 3-for-3 game. And so the next day he came and like would punch Tiny 3 times and kept doing that, kept going until he finally like had a bad game after doing it. And so he stopped. And Tiny's like, oh, thank goodness.
Oh, my God. There you go. The secret to Todd Helton's success is beating up clubhouse manager Mike Tiny Pontarelli.
No, it's a funny little story where he'd come in just like the 3 little jabs.
Or, Larry Walker's obsession with threes.
Yeah.
But you can find me over at Evan_Lang27 on Twitter. That's pretty much all I'm using right now at this point. I've tried the other platforms and it's not the same, unfortunately, in terms of reach.
Despite his best efforts, Elon Musk still has the best platform.
Yeah. The
most usable one.
I would say the platform with the most people on it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also follow Rocky Mountain Rooftop on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. And catch me doing the Monday Rock Pile and weekly Pebble Report over at purplerow.com. Thank you so much for listening to yet another episode of our hilarious Simpsons reference-filled show. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. Skyler, hit 'em with it.
Farewell!